Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back warmly to The Library is Open. So I hope you've brought your library cards, my absolute darlings. How are we doing? I just want to start off with a bit of an apology that this is posted a little later than I normally post my videos. I've been going through it. No, I have had a bit of a tumultuous couple of weeks, sort of emotionally and more recently physically as well. The long and short of it is that excuse me. The long and short of it is that I had an old injury from yoga randomly many years ago. For those of you who don't know, I practice yoga every day. I have done for about 16 years, something like that. And foolishly, not through the fault of the practice itself, but through my own, at the time, incompetence, I injured an area of my back, my lower back, sorry, and basically in the last couple of weeks or so, or the last week perhaps, I've inflamed that area. So yeah, it's been very painful. I haven't really been sleeping. It's very difficult without medication, which I now have, to sit down or even lie down or anything like that. So that's kind of slowed me up. I've just been sort of in a weird kind of stupor for the last couple of days and not really going out because it's been too painful. So, but I thought what I'd do is get back on board, put my glasses back on, because I know some people have missed them, trying to avoid the glare there from the ring light, but apologies if that's annoying. And do a little vlog about what I've been reading. Now, I know that some of you have commented that you've been in a little bit of a reading slump of late, and I totally understand. I think oftentimes with reading slumps, I kind of think of them as like peaks and troughs sort of thing. So sometimes you're on like a wave and you're riding high and you're like the next book, and then for some reason, whatever that might be, circumstances, either personal or you know, in my case physical, whatever, then you just hit a bit of a slump, and you've just got to kind of break through that, haven't you? And you know, one of the ways that I've been sort of combating that is to be which is not out of character, is to be reading thematically. You know, try and build up a bit of excitement for reading by having like a little bit of a theme. So I've got a couple of vlogs coming now that are themed, which I will discuss in due course. But this one is particularly this is medication talking as well, the painkillers I should say. I'm all over the place, aren't I? Look at my hands, bunch of bananas. So you must forgive me for if I'm repeating myself or losing my train of thought. But yes, what I've been having in the last couple of weeks is a bit of a YA-athon. So for those of you who don't know, YA, it stands for young adult. So YA fiction, young adult fiction, and it's typically targeted towards sort of teenage readers or late teen readers. Approximately from around 13, 14, I would say, to about 21 maybe, but I know that a lot of older people, myself included, read and enjoy, because in many ways there's been a kind of renaissance of the YA genre, and there's a lot of sort of interesting experimental stuff going on there, relating to, not only to identity but representation. And you know, it just sort of seems a little bit freer from the confines of quote unquote traditional adult fiction. So anyway, I kind of got into reading a bit, and you know, a lot of these I picked for their covers. I'm not gonna lie, YA fiction also has the distinction of being quite, you know, the covers are quite nice, they're attractive and appealing, and we know how I feel about an attractive and appealing book. So anyway, for whatever reason, I got onto a bit of a YA kick, so I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about them, because you know, I think sometimes people can feel a bit sort of ashamed of what they're reading, not anyone in particular, but or they have to sort of justify why. And I think you should just read what you enjoy, not what you think you're supposed to. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. So So yeah, so here's what I've been reading and enjoying. This first one stuck out to me for several reasons. This is called You're the One That I Want by Simon James Green, which is a YA LGBTQIA novel. Simon James Green, quite well known as the author of, just want to get all these right, The Heartbreak Boys, Alex in Wonderland, Noah Could Never, and Noah Can't Even. And this is a novel set in the UK, in London to be precise, about our main character who's called Freddie, who his mum's a TV producer, and you know she's sort of in that kind of a thingy disguise, a sort of thinly veiled Netflix series she's involved in, and he on the other hand has no talent whatsoever for performing. There was a disastrous incident with the production of Les Mis, I think it is. Anyway, he meets the star of his mum's new show and makes a right show of himself in front of him, and then he sort of has a pivotal moment where he's like, I want to change, I want to start saying yes to things, albeit kind of I don't want to say bullied along, jockeyed along by his friends, who they say you should just say yes to things and see what happens. And he ends up on the school production of Grease, where he falls in love with this new boy called Zach, who actually reciprocates his affections. But the plot is far from smooth, and there's a lot of ups and downs in the pursuit of love, the course of true love never running smooth, as we know from Papa Shakespeare. Whew. Yeah, basically he gets assigned to doing props and stage management for the show because he makes a fool of himself at his audition. And then there's stuff going on with the guy who he met at the sort of launch of his mum's Netflix show comes back into his life, and then something's not quite right about Zach, the new boy who likes him. And you know, this novel is really good fun, and the reason I particularly enjoy this novel, and although I haven't read Simon James Green's other ones, but I understand it's the same from having talked to people, is that the main character, the protagonist, is in many ways the kind of antithesis of the sort of quote-unquote perfect gay male character that we've been kind of instructed is the sort of archetype, if you will. He's a bit of a mess, he's a bit embarrassing, obnoxious. Do you hear that noise then? Obnoxious traffic. You know, he's obsessed with donuts, things like that. And you know, it may seem like a really simple thing, but actually I think true representation comes from a wide diversity of characters, doesn't it? Which is to say that actually, you know, we are presented with a series of characters that have nuance, that have that are allowed to not be perfectly representative, whatever that means, you know. So I really enjoy this, and of course I love a school play because of, you know, my job in the industry, and this is a novel that I would have picked up as a kid or as a young teen sort of thing. So I really enjoyed it here. It's very well written, it's nicely paced, the characters are vivid, and I just sort of think it's just so nice to think that this kind of stuff is now available for teens. I could never have envisaged that. I have a friend who does academic study on like teenage fiction, or YA I should say, through the years, with a specific focus on the representation of HIV and AIDS. And you know, the massive gulf between what was when we were teenagers being presented as YA fiction and what is presented now is really really quite wide. So this is really, really fun. I really enjoyed this, and this is what kind of snowballed my YA-athon. I moved on very quickly to this, which I just loved the cover of, because it's kind of set up like an old VHS tape, which I miss VHS tapes, I'm not gonna lie. This is called Mina and the Undead, and what kind of sold it to me was one of the people sort of writing about it on the back put a fun romp through 90s pop culture. Vampires, Buffy, The Crow, need I say more? No, you don't need to. Now, because I'm sold already. I look at that, that's lovely. You know I love a sprayed edge. And this is about Mina, who is a British girl who arrives in New Orleans to visit her sister Libby. Their mum's disappeared. Their mum had an obsession with vampires and disappeared, and she's been living with their aunt. Anyway, she comes to see her sister who's studying in New Orleans. And her sister also works at this haunted mansion. It's like a sort of tourist attraction. So she gets a job there too, and falls in love with one of her sister's housemates. However, plot twist, well, I'll read from the back. Their perfect summer bliss is broken when she stumbles upon the body of a girl with puncture marks on her necks, clutching a lock of hair that suspiciously resembles her sister's. Anyway, it turns out that someone's replicating the most sort of notorious crimes of New Orleans, in New Orleans history, and they may or may not have ties to vampirism. So it's kind of gothic, YA murder mystery kind of style. Do I think it lived up to that sort of romp through 90s pop culture? In a way. It wasn't necessarily exactly what I would have envisaged, but then, you know, if I'm saying that, then I should just write my own, shouldn't I? It was perfectly enjoyable, if a little slow in places, and the sort of ending kind of appeared out of nowhere, the sort of solution to the mystery, if you will. But on the plus side, there's some interesting character study stuff here, some queer rep, and also there is really interesting information about the history of New Orleans. That's, I said, New Orleans. I know it's like New Orleans, isn't it? But I say New Orleans, so I apologise for that. Although John Bon Jovi does say New Orleans, doesn't he? Dancing with the Queen of New Orleans, but I presume that's just to fit the meter. Anyway, so yeah, it was interesting. I would have liked a bit more Buffy allusion, but that's just on me. But and maybe but then again, I was going to say a bit more hammering of the 90s vibe, but then again, how would you do that without it seeming contrived? So it's still very interesting. And what's really nice about this is it's published by UCLan Publishing, which is the University of Central Lancashire. It's part of their degree course in publishing, basically, is that they publish things, which is wonderful, isn't it? And this is how this this novel came to be published. So that's a great initiative. So that's that. I moved on from there to this absolutely stunningly beautiful book. I mean, look at those sprayed edges. That's good. I literally bought it for the sprayed edge, but it turns out it's also wonderful. So this is Kacen Callender, Felix Ever After, and our protagonist here is a character called Felix Love. He is, to use the blurb, black, queer and trans, and trying to sort of figure out his place in the world, his identity, his relationships. He's never been in love, despite the irony of being called love, and really wants to be. And he's currently at this, it's a sort of summer program for talented artist kids, basically, that if they do well at it, can help them get a scholarship to an Ivy League school. I think it's Brown in America. This is New York. And what happens is someone discovers Felix's dead name, which, if you don't know, it's a dead name is when someone is trans and they have begun living as their actual gender. The dead name is the name that they were given when they were assumed to be a different gender, which is oftentimes no longer used and is very kind of painful to, and shouldn't be brought up by anybody other than the person themselves. So they create this exhibit that features Felix's dead name, and he sort of goes on this quest to discover who it is, and in doing so, he suspects this other guy who used to go out with his best friend, and so he creates a fake online persona to try and get him to betray himself, but it doesn't work, and they end up kind of falling for each other. And this is just kind of set against the backdrop of 21st century queer young New York. There's some really, really interesting stuff about Felix coming to terms with his identity and discovering the full spectrum of genders that are available to him, and coming to recognise as well that defining is not about making it up to anyone else or having to justify yourself. It's about being comfortable. We talk a lot about how labels, you know, can sometimes be reductive, but they're also empowering. You know, there is a power in words, and if anyone knows that, it's book readers. And so that's just really gorgeous and interesting. And I think this is what's really lovely is we get a lovely little bit at the back from the author talking about their own particular gender journey, which just sort of really adds a lot of context. And also for readers maybe who are questioning their gender identity, it's like a little hand coming out of the book, isn't it, and sort of saying, you know, I've walked this road, why not check my footsteps and see if you feel that this is your road too, or maybe yours is a different road. You get the metaphor. But this is really, really lovely. Lots of stuff about art, lots of stuff about identity and creation. You know, it's catnip to me, and just very beautifully crafted. And again, great to see some black queer trans rep as well. You know, that really intersectional stuff that we need to see much more of. And then finally, this was an impulse buy about a year ago, and I finally got around to reading it. And it's called, mostly because the cover, that's beautiful, isn't it? It's called Mad, Bad and Dangerous to Know by Samira Ahmed, and it was shortlisted for the Waterstones Children's Book Prize, yeah. And this is set in Paris in August, and our sort of lead character is Kacen, who's a budding art historian who submitted an essay to a competition, and it was basically pulled to pieces. That this was back home where she lives in Chicago, and it was to do with Delacroix, Lord Byron, and Alexandre Dumas, the one who wrote Three Musketeers. Anyway, so she's kind of in disgrace, and she goes to Paris because she's her father is originally from Paris. Her mother is not. I think her mother's Muslim. Her dad's French. Not that you can't be French Muslim, but you know. And so but they always spend a bit of the year in Paris. So, and then she meets this guy who is a descendant of Alexandre Dumas. And they sort of go on this kind of literary art world, historical mystery journey to discover the truth about this woman who is referred to in a lot of the writings of these men, and it's about sort of trying to reclaim her identity and put her story back on the page where she's previously been subjugated. She was also a Muslim woman who fell in love in, what year was it? I do apologise, I should have primed for this. The Muslim, she's in the past is called Layla. So this would have been, I imagine, this 17 or 1800s. And we sort of get a one chapter of the modern day, one chapter of the past, and we see where those two stories intersect through art, investigation, and stuff like that. And also we have a contemporary plot with a love affair between the descendant of Dumas that Kacen meets, and also her boyfriend in Chicago. And, you know, it serves as a treatise, really, again, on intersectional representation for women, and how oftentimes people who are not cis, white, straight kind of get pushed back into history or not allowed to take their place. They're kind of a footnote in other people's stories. Anyway, Kacen takes it upon herself to put this woman's story back centre stage and hopefully save her budding or not so budding art history career, as well as navigating love. It's really, really interesting. I think there was a bit towards the middle, I was a bit sort of, I don't know if it was a personal thing. I wasn't completely hooked on what was happening. It was a little bit meandery, but that's not the author's fault. I think that's just what needed to happen for the resolution of the story. And then we do sort of very quickly get to the resolution, almost as with Mina and the Undead, a little bit sort of like, oh, okay. But I think this is absolutely very, very important book, not only because of the representation, but also because of the daring to write on bigger themes that are not just about romance and relationships and stuff, although those things are important. You know, it's like children and teen readers are capable of more, appreciating more, and having a wider understanding of the world So I think that's really, really important, and that kind of concluded my YA-athon before I moved on to another theme. I should have said, and I didn't, that Mina and the Undead was written by McCaw. My apologies for that. So yeah, that's what I was reading YA-wise. I did move on to something else, another theme, which I will cover in a separate video because it's sort of part of a larger project that I'm working on at the moment. So do stay tuned for that. But what this has also made me realise is that after I did the 7 days of reading vlog that a lot of you seem to enjoy, that I'm going to do another one, but this time I'm going to set myself the challenge of reading. In my head, I'm going to call it like reading like it's 1995. And I've managed to get hold of some secondhand copies of books that I read in the 90s, and I thought it'd be really, really fun to vlog 7 days of reading them all again, just to see if they hold up, see what the differences between now and then are, and see if I can do one a day, because I've selected like 7. I wonder if I could do one a day if they're young people's fiction from then, which tends to be a lot shorter. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's the end of today's video. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for commenting. I'm sorry if it sometimes takes me a while to get around to answering your comments, but I absolutely always will. So don't feel that you're being ignored. It's just a question of when I get time to do it, and make quality time to do it, so that I'm not just, you know, fobbing you off with a haha cool. Although I do reserve the right to do that. So anyway, put your leprechaun somewhere safe now, my darlings. In a back pocket, a front pocket, a side pocket, an otter's pocket. I don't know, I've been watching a lot of Benidorm lately. And I will see you in the next video. So do me a favour and be safe, look after yourselves out there. And if you're in the UK, enjoy the sunshine while it lasts. Okay, but remember the sunscreen. All right, my lovelies. You take care, keep sniffing those books, and I will see you very soon. Mwah.